The night garden, a tale of dreams, stars, and the gentle magic of rest, in the very heart of a quiet valley, hidden by gentle hills that rolled like waves. There was a garden that only appeared after sunset. By day, the place looked like an empty meadow, soft grass, a few sleepy trees, and a stream that whispered to itself. But the moment the last ray of sunlight slipped away, the garden awakened. Flowers of silver light bloomed where no flowers had been. The air filled with the faintest glow, as if moonlight had learned how to grow roots. Petals opened in slow motion, revealing colors that didn't exist in the daytime world, shades of dream blue, deep starlight purple, and gold so soft it felt like a memory. In the center of the garden stood an old oak tree, its bark etched with spirals and stars, as though the night sky itself had once leaned against it and left its mark. And under that tree sat a girl named Leora. Leora was not from the valley. She had wandered there one evening, following a soft hum in the air, a sound like a lullaby being sung by the wind. She didn't know why, but she felt certain the garden had been waiting for her. As the night deepened, tiny floating lights, not quite fireflies, not quite stars, began drifting through the air. They circled Leora lazily. As if curious about this human visitor, she smiled, feeling their gentle warmth on her cheeks. Then, from somewhere deeper in the garden, a voice spoke. It was not loud, but it carried like the moonlight itself. "Welcome, Dreamwalker." Leora looked around, but saw no one. The voice came again, soft and low. "You have found the night garden, and in the night garden, time moves differently. Here, you may wander for as long as you like, and wake to find only moments have passed." Something in those words made her shoulders loosen, made the tightness of the day melt away. She took a deep breath, and it felt like she was inhaling stardust. Leora rose slowly from beneath the great oak, brushing away the soft glow petals that had gathered on her lap. Before her, 3 paths stretched out into the shimmering night, paths that hadn't been there moments ago. The first path was made of smooth white stones, glowing faintly, like a trail of little moons. The second path was lined with tall, swaying flowers whose petals hummed a low, steady note, almost like a heartbeat. The third was not a path at all, but a stream, flowing with water so clear that the stars above seemed to swim inside it. She stood for a while, listening to the hush of the night garden. Even the silence here was soft, the kind of silence that feels full rather than empty. A tiny glowing light, one of the not quite fireflies, floated up to her face and hovered there. Its glow pulsed gently, almost in rhythm with her breathing. When she blinked, the light drifted toward the stone path. "All right," Leora whispered. "I'll follow you." The stones were cool beneath her feet, though she wasn't sure if she was actually touching them or simply gliding along. Every step released a faint sound, like a small chime far in the distance. As she walked, the air grew sweeter, a soft mix of night jasmine, warm rain, and something else she couldn't name. It made her eyelids feel heavier, but in a pleasant way, as if each step wrapped her in another layer of rest. Ahead, the stone path curved and led to a small pond, its surface as still as glass. In the middle of the pond was a single lily, but unlike any lily she had ever seen. Its petals were made of light. The pond was so still, so perfectly smooth, that Leora could see the night sky reflected on its surface without a single ripple. It was as though she stood between 2 skies, one above her, and one beneath her feet. In the very center, the lily floated. Its petals were translucent, glowing softly from within. Not harsh like a lamp, not sharp like lightning, but warm, like the last light of evening resting on your skin. Leora stepped closer to the water's edge. The white stones beneath her faded into soft moss, and the air grew cooler. Not cold, just enough to make her want to draw in a deep breath, and let it go, slowly. The glowing light that had led her here drifted forward, hovering over the pond, and for a moment she thought it might land on the lily. But instead, it dipped low, touching the surface, and a small, perfect ripple began to spread outward. The ripple was strange. It didn't fade as it moved. It glowed, a ring of silver light expanding slowly. passing under the lily and flowing to the very edges of the pond. When it touched the shore where she stood, Leora felt it, a gentle warmth around her ankles, a shiver of calm rising up through her legs, a heaviness in her shoulders as if the ripple had carried away every last thought she didn't need to carry anymore. Then, the lily's petals began to open. Inside was not a flower's heart, but a tiny sphere, clear as crystal, with a faint swirling mist inside. A voice came again. Not from the pond, not from the air, but from somewhere both near and far. Every traveler in the night garden finds a gift. The lily drifted slightly toward her, as if the water itself wanted to bring it closer. Leora reached out her hands. The lily drifted closer, the water beneath it moving in the quietest way, almost as if it were breathing. Leora knelt at the edge of the pond. Her reflection shimmered in the still water, two eyes staring back from a world upside down. The glowing lily floated between them, like a bridge connecting her to the reflection that wasn't quite her. She reached out her hands. The moment her fingertips touched the petals, a faint warmth traveled up her skin, not heat but something gentler, like the feeling of morning sunlight through a window on the first day of spring. The crystal sphere in the center of the lily pulsed once, and the mist inside began to swirl faster. Colors formed within it, deep blues, soft golds, and threads of silver like tiny falling stars. Leora cupped the lily in her hands. The petals did not bend or break. They felt as though they were made of light that had chosen to become solid just for this moment. The voice came again, close enough to feel but still without a source. This is the seed of rest. The words echoed softly in her mind, as if spoken in a room made of clouds. When planted, it will grow into a place where dreams can take root, a place that will wait for you whenever you need it, no matter where you are. Leora looked down at the glowing sphere. It seemed impossibly light in her hands, like holding a memory instead of a stone. She opened her mouth to ask where she should plant it, but before she could speak, the glowing light, her little guide, drifted away from the pond, trailing a thin ribbon of silver in the air. It wanted her to follow. She rose slowly, tucking the lily carefully against her chest. The warmth seeped into her heart, and with every step after, her feet felt softer on the earth, her thoughts slower, as though she was walking deeper into the heart of sleep itself. The little glowing guide drifted ahead, and Leora followed. The ground beneath her feet changed. It was no longer white stones, no longer moss, but a carpet of silver leaves, soft as silk, cool as twilight. Each step made a sound, a faint hush, like the whisper of paper being turned in a book. And with each sound, Leora's mind turned a little quieter. Step, hush, step, hush, step, hush. The leaves gave off a gentle glow, not bright enough to light the way completely, but enough to keep the darkness friendly, the kind of light you can fall asleep under. Her guide floated slowly, never rushing, never drifting too far ahead. It would pause, as if waiting for her to catch up, and when she did, it would drift forward again. Softly, slowly. The seed of rest was still in her hands. It was warm, but not in a way that made her want to hold on tightly. It was the kind of warmth that spread outward, filling her chest, then her shoulders, then the back of her neck, until every part of her felt as though it was sighing. Somewhere far away, Leora thought she heard water. Not rushing water, but the slow, patient kind, like a stream winding through a meadow in no hurry to arrive anywhere. The air smelled faintly of rain and flowers. Every breath seemed to draw her deeper into a place where time was soft, where there was no need to remember what came before, or wonder what came next. Step, hush, step, hush, step, hush. Her eyes began to half close as she walked. The guide's glow became a blur, like a small moon swimming in her vision. The leaves beneath her seemed softer still, as if they were encouraging her to slow. Slow, slow. And the deeper she walked, the more it felt like the night garden itself was breathing with her. The silver leaves began to thin, until they became scattered, and then were gone. In their place, a wooden bridge stretched before her. It was old, but not broken. Its boards were smooth, as if many years of moonlight had polished them. Beneath the bridge, water flowed in perfect silence. It did not rush. It did not babble. It simply moved. Slow and steady, like the deep, quiet breathing of someone sleeping peacefully. Leora stepped onto the bridge. Her footsteps made no sound, only the faint feeling of movement. Beneath her, the slow sway of wood and rope, as the water passed below. Halfway across, she paused. The glow of her little guide hovered ahead, but did not move on Dot. It waited, as though the bridge was a place for resting, not just passing. She leaned on the railing. The water below was dark, but speckled with light. It was as if the stars from above had chosen to drift here for a while, floating on the surface, carried by the gentle current. And then, she noticed something strange. The stars in the water were breathing. Their light expanded, and faded, expanded, and faded, in a slow, calming rhythm. Almost without realizing it, Leora matched her own breathing to theirs. In and out, in and out. The seed of rest pulsed faintly in her hands. Not quickly, but in the same slow pattern. It was as if everything here, the bridge, the water, the stars, was moving together, sharing the same quiet heartbeat. The guide drifted forward again, pulling her gently from the railing. Leora followed, her steps lighter than before. At the far end of the bridge, a soft mist curled upward from the ground, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Through the mist, she could just make out the shape of a tall, curved gate. The air beyond the gate seemed even more still than the rest of the night garden. The mist curled upward in thin, lazy ribbons, like smoke from a candle long after it has been blown out. It did not block her path, but it made the air ahead seem softer, quieter, as though it belonged to another layer of night. The gate stood tall, its frame made from a pale, smooth wood that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. It was arched and along its curve. Tiny silver leaves had been carved into the surface, each one catching the light, each one different from the next. The little glowing guide hovered before the gate, its light steady and patient. It did not push her forward, only waited as though it knew she would step through when she was ready. Leora stood there for a moment, the seed of rest warm in her hands. She took a slow breath in, held it, then let it go, feeling her shoulders drop and her mind grow still. She stepped forward. The moment she passed beneath the arch, the world shifted. It was not sudden, not sharp, but gentle, like sinking slowly into deep water. The air on the other side was warmer, thicker, and the sound of the world grew distant. She could still see the stars above, still see the soft glow of the garden's flowers, but everything seemed to move more slowly now. The petals of a drifting bloom took their time falling to the ground. The mist curled in loops that lingered in the air longer than they should have. It was the kind of place where even thoughts did not hurry. The glowing guide floated to her side now, as though they were equals on this path. And far ahead she could see a faint golden glow, steady, warm, like a fire seen from far across a field at night. Step by step she began to walk toward it. The glow ahead was far, but not in a way that made her hurry. It was the kind of far that invites you to take your time, to notice the way the ground feels under your feet, to hear the faint sounds of the night hidden between each step. The path here was wide but not empty. Tiny blooms grew along its edges, not silver, not blue, but a warm, golden color that seemed to catch the glow from far ahead and send it dancing across their petals. They swayed slowly, though there was no breeze. Each movement was as unhurried as a deep breath. Leora's own breathing began to match their rhythm. In and out, in and out. The seed of rest in her hands was warmer now, and the warmth was steady, like the calm heartbeat of something that trusted her completely. The glowing guide drifted just to her right, close enough that its light brushed against her arm. It didn't need to lead anymore. It simply kept her company, floating along as if it too was enjoying the slowness of this part of the journey. As she walked, the air began to change. It carried a scent like soft wood smoke mixed with the faint sweetness of something baking far away. It was the kind of scent that makes your chest feel warm before you even know why. The golden glow ahead grew a little stronger, but still far enough that she could sink into the walk itself. The steps, the breath, the feeling of time stretching gently around her like a blanket. The ground beneath has shifted from earth to something softer, a deep, velvety moss that made her footsteps silent. It felt almost like walking on clouds. Step and breathe. Step and breathe. Somewhere above, an owl called, low, slow, and then silence again. the kind of silence that feels alive. Leora's eyes began to half close as she walked. Her mind was quiet now, filled only with the golden glow ahead, and the slow, steady warmth she carried in her hands. The glow was nearer now. It spilled softly across the mossy path, stretching in long, golden fingers that seemed to welcome her forward. There was no rush in their invitation, only patience, as though they had been waiting for her for a very long time. The air here was warmer, not the warmth of a summer sun, but the kind that comes from a fire burning quietly in the heart of a safe place. Her glowing guide floated ahead now, drifting toward the light, its movements slow and almost drowsy, as if even it was beginning to feel the pull of rest. The moss gave way to a small clearing. Around the edge, tall night-blooming flowers formed a gentle wall. Their petals turned toward the glow like they were listening. And in the very center stood a small stone cottage. Its walls were smooth and pale, lit by the golden light spilling from its windows. The roof was dark, covered with soft, silvery moss that shimmered faintly in the starlight. Smoke rose from its chimney in slow curls, joining the night sky without a sound. Somewhere inside, something crackled, the steady, comforting sound of logs burning low in a hearth. Leora stopped at the edge of the clearing. The seed of rest pulsed softly in her hands, as if recognizing this place. The door to the cottage was slightly open. A faint glow spilled onto the moss, painting it in liquid gold. Her glowing guide drifted to the doorway, hovered there for a moment, and then slipped inside. The air smelled of warm bread, and something sweet, and something faintly herbal like tea steeping in a quiet kitchen. Leora stepped forward, her feet silent on the moss, her heart steady and calm. She reached the door, and paused, just before stepping through. The door was light beneath her hand. It didn't creak, didn't groan. It simply moved, as though it had been waiting to open for her. The golden glow wrapped around her the moment she stepped inside. It was warmer here, not the kind of warmth that makes you want to leave, but the kind that makes you never want to move again. The air smelled of bread fresh from the oven, of honey melting into tea, of something faintly floral like lavender resting on the windowsill. The floor was made of smooth wood, its surface softened by woven rugs in deep blues and gentle creams. Each step sank slightly into the fabric, and the softness reached all the way up her legs. To her left, a low table held a teapot and 2 cups. Steam curled lazily upward from one cup, as though someone had poured it moments ago and had been waiting for her to arrive. To her right, a tall shelf was lined with jars, each filled with something different. Some held dried leaves in shades of silver and green. Some glimmered faintly, as if holding captured moonlight. Others seemed almost empty, until she tilted her head and saw small motes of light drifting inside, like tiny sleeping stars. And in the center of the room, a hearth burned low, its flames moving slowly, casting long, gentle shadows that swayed against the walls. The fire wasn't loud, just a soft, steady crackle that seemed to match the beat of her heart. The glowing guide floated to the hearth. It hovered there for a moment, and then, very slowly, its light dimmed, until it became a small, glowing ember that settled into the fire. The seed of rest was still warm in her hands. And here, in this golden room, it felt even lighter than before, as though it knew it was exactly where it was meant to be. Leora stepped toward the fire. The fire's light painted her hands in gold. The seed of rest glowed faintly against her skin, not with brightness, but with a quiet, steady light that felt alive. By the hearth stood a small clay pot, its surface smooth, its rim worn as if it had been touched many times before. Inside, dark earth waited, soft and rich with a faint scent of rain. She knelt beside it. The warmth of the fire brushed her cheek, and the quiet of the cottage wrapped around her shoulders like a shawl. Leora cupped the seed of rest in both hands and held it close for a moment. She closed her eyes, letting her breath move slow and deep. When she opened them again, she felt ready. She pressed the seed gently into the earth. The soil accepted it without resistance, as if it had been waiting. A soft glow spread from the seed, curling into the earth, tracing faint lines of light through the soil-like roots of moonlight. The glow was slow, gentle, unhurried. And then, the warmth began to rise. It spread up through the pot, into the air, into her hands, into her chest. It wasn't the warmth of fire, but the warmth of something alive. Something that would never rush her. The fire crackled once, as though it had noticed. The cottage seemed even quieter now, but it was the kind of quiet that was full of comfort, full of presence. Leora stayed there for a while, hands resting on the rim of the pot, watching the glow settle into the soil until it became part of the earth itself. When she finally stood, she felt lighter. Not because the journey was over, but because she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. It began so faintly that Leora almost didn't notice. At first, there was only the scent, something new, something delicate, like the memory of flowers carried on a wind too soft to feel. She looked toward the pot by the hearth. The earth there was no longer dark. Thin veins of light wound through it, shifting and curling slowly, as though the soil was dreaming. A single sprout emerged. It was pale at first, almost silver, its stem bending gently as if still half asleep. The room seemed to grow warmer in its presence, not in temperature alone, but in spirit. The air felt fuller dot, calmer dot, like the way a quiet room feels when someone you love is resting nearby. Leora lowered herself onto the rug before the fire. The woven threads were soft under her hands, and the rhythm of the flames matched the rhythm of her breath. The sprout unfurled a single leaf, broad and smooth, catching the firelight in a golden sheen. It did not hurry. It did not strain. It simply grew. Somewhere deep in the walls of the cottage, a slow, steady hum began. Not a sound. Exactly, more like a feeling that settled in her bones and made her shoulders loosen. The sprout's glow brightened, and with it, the rest of the room seemed to join in. The jars on the shelves glistened as though they held bits of morning sunlight. The steam from the teacup moved in slow spirals, dancing with the golden light in the air. Even the fire's crackle softened, each ember pulsing as if breathing alongside her. Leora let her eyes drift half-closed. The blooming magic was not loud, not sharp. It was the kind that seeped in and made every part of her feel safe. She could stay here for hours. She could stay here for days. Outside the window, night had deepened. The stars hung lower now, their light soft and full, as if they too were leaning closer to listen. The cottage's golden glow slipped through the cracks in the shutters and spread gently across the moss outside. Where the light touched, tiny silver flowers began to open, petals, unfolding with the slow grace of a deep breath. The air beyond the walls was still and clear, carrying only the faint rustle of leaves and the distant call of a night bird. Even that call was unhurried, like the bird was singing to keep itself awake in a world that had grown very still. Leora sat on the rug, her eyes tracing the way the golden light met the moonlight. They didn't compete. They blended. They made something softer, something kinder, like two threads woven into the same cloth. From somewhere far away, the night garden seemed to stir. The path she had walked earlier was now lined with dimly glowing petals. The tall trees she had passed beneath let their branches droop lower, their leaves sighing in the gentle air. Even the small stream she had crossed moved slower now, its ripples more like ripples of silk than of water. It was as though the magic of the seed of rest wasn't content to stay in the soil. It was reaching outward, reminding the night how to breathe slowly again. The hum in the walls deepened. The fire burned lower, its warmth now more like a blanket than a flame. Leora's eyelids felt heavy. Her body had settled into the kind of stillness that comes only when every part of you knows it is safe. The glow from the pot by the hearth had softened to a steady, breathing light. Not pulsing, not fading, just there, like the quiet presence of someone watching over you as you rest. Leora shifted slightly on the rug, her body sinking deeper into its woven threads. The fire's warmth had wrapped around her like a second skin, and her thoughts had grown slow and pleasantly tangled, the way they do when you're not quite awake, not quite asleep. Outside, the silver flowers continued to open, but at a pace so gentle that even the moon seemed content to wait. The stream's ripples had turned to glass, catching the faint reflection of the cottage's light and holding it as though it belonged there forever. Her eyes drifted toward the teacup on the low table. The steam still rose, but now it curled in. Shapes too soft to name, almost like memories she couldn't quite hold on to. A scent reached her, sweet, soothing, familiar in a way she couldn't explain. The hum in the walls had slowed too. It no longer filled the space so much as it cradled it, a deep, steady presence that told her nothing outside could touch this place tonight. Her breathing matched it without effort. In, out, slow, even slower. The room seemed to grow dimmer, though nothing had changed, only her awareness turning inward, toward the place inside where dreams gather quietly before they spill into sleep. She rested her head against her arm and closed her eyes. The fire's light played behind her, eyelids like the memory of sunlight through leaves. The seed's warmth lingered in her chest, and the night garden's hush slipped around her like the softest blanket. The last thing Leora remembered before sleep took her was the slow, steady warmth that spread from the hearth, through the rug up into her bones. Then, she was walking again, not on the stone path of the night garden, but on something softer, a trail made of pale mist cool beneath her bare feet. It didn't lead anywhere she could see. It simply continued. Above her, the stars were closer now, large enough to see their gentle flicker, as if they were breathing too. Every so often, one of them would drift downward, its light falling like a single drop of water into the mist at her feet. The sound here was unlike anything in waking life. It was not music, but it moved like music, a soft thread of tones that rose and fell without urgency, wrapping around her in the way a shawl wraps against a chill. She did not wonder where she was. She did not need to. In dreams, places don't have to explain themselves. Ahead, the mist trail widened into a small clearing. At its center stood a tree made entirely of light. Its branches reached outward like quiet rivers in the sky, each tipped with a slow-turning star. When she stepped closer, the ground beneath her gave the faintest sigh, and the stars in the branches seemed to turn toward her like curious eyes. She touched the trunk. It was warm, the same warmth as the seed of rest. And suddenly she knew this was where the seed had come from. The dream was not a place she had stumbled into. It was the other half of the cottage magic, the part that lived inside sleep. The last thing Leora remembered before sleep took her was the slow, steady warmth that spread from the hearth, through the rug up into her bones. Then, she was walking again, not on the stone path of the night garden, but on something softer, a trail made of pale mist cool beneath her bare feet. It didn't lead anywhere she could see. It simply continued. Above her, the stars were closer now, large enough to see their gentle flicker, as if they were breathing too. Every so often, one of them would drift downward, its light falling like a single drop of water into the mist at her feet. The sound here was unlike anything in waking life. It was not music, but it moved like music, a soft thread of tones that rose and fell without urgency, wrapping around her in the way a shawl wraps against a chill. She did not wonder where she was. She did not need to. In dreams, places don't have to explain themselves. Ahead, the mist trail widened into a small clearing. At its center stood a tree made entirely of light. Its branches reached outward like quiet rivers in the sky, each tipped with a slow-turning star. When she stepped closer, the ground beneath her gave the faintest sigh, and the stars in the branches seemed to turn toward her like curious eyes. She touched the trunk. It was warm, the same warmth as the seed of rest. And suddenly she knew this was where the seed had come from. The dream was not a place she had stumbled into. It was the other half of the cottage magic, the part that lived inside sleep. From the tree of light, narrow bridges stretched outward, not made of wood or stone, but of woven starlight. They hung in the air as if the night itself had braided them into shape. Leora stepped onto the first one. It didn't sway. It didn't creak. It simply welcomed her feet as though she had always belonged here. Beneath the bridge, there was no ground, only a soft expanse of night, endless and calm. She had the feeling that if she stepped off the side, she would not fall but drift, and keep drifting, until she became part of the sky. As she walked, tiny motes of light rose up from the bridge with each step. They didn't fade. They followed her, floating like fireflies that had forgotten how to rush. One bridge led to another, each meeting at a small circle of light, where a single glowing stone rested in the center. When she touched each stone, it gave off a hum, a different note each time. She began to notice that together the stones were making a song. Not a song to be sung aloud, but a song meant to be felt. A song that slowed her heart, that loosened her thoughts, that made her eyes grow heavier with every step. Somewhere far behind her, the tree of light still shone like a beacon. Somewhere far ahead, another glow waited, dimmer, but calling her gently forward. The dream didn't press her to move quickly. It seemed perfectly content for her to stop at each stone to rest her hands there. to let the hum seep into her like warmth into cold fingers. And the longer she stayed, the softer the dream became. The edges of things blurred, the bridges, the circles of light, even the stars above. They were all melting into the same slow, endless night. The last bridge ended at a wide expanse of light. It wasn't a room. It wasn't a meadow. It wasn't anywhere she could name. It simply was. Soft, endless, and so gentle that the idea of waking felt like a story she'd heard once, a very long time ago. Leora stepped onto it, and the light welcomed her, wrapping around her in the way warm water does when you sink beneath its surface. There was no up, no down, no sense of moving forward. Only floating. The motes of light that had followed her gathered closer now, forming a slow swirl around her like a constellation that had come to life. Their glow matched the rhythm of her breath, in, out, slower, slower still. Somewhere, very faintly, she thought she heard the hum of the seed in the cottage, as if the magic there was still holding her from far away. Or maybe it was simply her own heartbeat, steady and calm. Her eyes closed fully now, though in this place it made no difference. Light was everywhere, and yet it didn't keep her awake. It soothed. The last of her thoughts slid away without resistance. No need to remember where she had been. No need to wonder where she was going. The dream had become nothing more than warmth, and the warmth had become nothing more than rest. Here, in this soft and endless quiet, there were no edges, no time, no weight. Only peace. Only sleep.